Faith isn't fragile.
Although, you should be a little careful with that, by the way.
It's just been falsely framed.
It's crooked.
You believed, you prayed, you served, and now you're not even sure what you believe anymore. That's what deconstruction feels like. It's messy, it's painful, but maybe, just maybe, it's not the end of your faith. Maybe it's the beginning of a deeper one. Let's talk about it. First of all, not all deconstruction is a rebellion. Sometimes it's revelation. I've found that many who walk away from the church aren't rejecting Jesus. They're rejecting a version of him that was never biblical to begin with. In fact, Jesus warned us, build your life on the rock or risk the sand. That's sort of a summarizing of Matthew 7:24-27. But if your faith can't survive questions, my point is maybe it was built on silence, not truth.
Tough, but fair.
A student hears, for example, the Bible and science, they just don't mix. Then they go to college and they lose faith.
Well, he was away at college.
But what really failed them? Not the Bible, shallow teaching. Stats from Barna show the number one reason young people leave the church is because no one made room for their questions. Number two, tear down what's false and rebuild what's true. It's that simple. Jeremiah 6:16 says, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Walk in them. Culture says, follow your truth. But Jesus says, I am the truth. John 14:6. So don't just deconstruct, reconstruct. Deconstruction without reconstruction is just demolition, really. Remember that scene from Good Will Hunting? I know it's an old movie. I'm dating myself. But here's the quote. It's not your fault. That's what Jesus says to those who've been hurt by bad theology or abuse or hypocrisy. He's not mad at you for doubting. He's inviting you to rebuild. Number three, Jesus doesn't run from doubters. I've noticed he most often moves toward them. John 20:27 is when his apostle Thomas was doubting. You know what? Thomas didn't get canceled. What he got was clarity. Jesus showed up. He showed Thomas his scars, and then he said, touch me, ask and believe. That's discipleship, not dismissal. Jude 1:22 says, be merciful to those who doubt. We need a lot more of that in the church. You know, even the great theologian C.S. Lewis had to wrestle with doubt before he became one of the greatest defenders of the faith of all time. I think that's because real faith doesn't ignore questions. It wrestles through them with Jesus. Number four, build again on the rock this time. This isn't about going back to a church building. This is about finding the real Jesus. Hebrews 12:2 says, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. So start reading the Gospels, ask hard questions, pray raw prayers, because the faith you find on the other side of doubt, it'll be stronger, deeper, and more real than you ever imagined. Finally, if you're deconstructing, don't walk away. Dig deeper. Jesus isn't afraid of your doubts. He's already walking through your locked doors like he did in the upper room with the disciples. John 20:19. And just like Thomas, you might go from skeptic to evangelist in one breath. Here's what he said in that one breath. He said to Jesus, my Lord and my God. That's quite a change. Listen, what if God is tearing down your false beliefs, not to ruin your faith, but to finally make it real? Like, share, subscribe, and drop a comment if this hits you where you're at. You're not alone, and Jesus is worth rebuilding for.